So the new Spider-Man fan film that everyone's been meat riding for the past few years has finally been released. And it's extremely fucking mid. Actually, the first hour of it is extremely mid. I've only watched like the first hour as I'm talking to you right now, but by the end of the video, I'll have watched the whole thing. Yeah, I just kind of had to take a break from it because it's pretty brutal. Anyway, the movie is basically just a live-action reenactment of part of the Amazing Spider-Man comic series, and it follows Peter Parker trying to get back into the groove of being Spider-Man after the death of Gwen Stacy. I feel like I should just clarify that the movie's not that bad so far. There's just a ton of weird shit within the first hour of the movie that I will be addressing individually very soon. All this shit just completely throws me in and out of the whole thing. It's a weird experience. And I guess before I rip open Spider-Man Lotus's chest and take a fat shit in the crevice inside, I want to clarify that any reasonings for my opinions are not at all influenced by any bias that I may have towards the creators. I know there was that whole fucking racism controversy last year or 2 years ago or whatever that happened with the movie and now everyone hates it, but it really is not hard to separate art from its artist, and I'm gonna be doing that today. So yeah, without further ado, let's fucking tackle this horse. Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever. The movie starts off with an odd-looking CGI car chase that I don't really want to get into just because of the fact that the movie's budget was only $115,000. But then we get into this fight scene with Shocker, and it just feels so fucking weird. I don't know what it is, but I think it's Spider-Man's banter that comes off like extremely weird and cheesy. Of course, it's not uncommon for Spidey to act like a dumbass and say random shit while fighting people he knows he can beat, but everything he does and says here doesn't really land like it would with a big screen Spider-Man.
Oh no!
What?
What are you wearing?
It's my shocker suit!
Oh, better put some ice on that. Here might, Hey, if you don't want to do dinner, there's always karaoke night.
Actually, come to mention it, the entire dialogue sequence here sounds unnatural as shit. The actors, aside from Shocker, they all look bored as fuck. And Shocker himself sounds off because the editing team thought it'd be a great idea to add this fucking echo effect to his voice.
Come on out, Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Spider-Man.
And it kind of falls apart. And Spidey also really loves doing pointless flips for some reason. Like, look at this shit right at the end of the fight.
Better like next time.
It's so fucking goofy. Like, I thought he was gonna, flip and then kick Shocker in the face or something and finish the fight that way. But no, he just flips his way over into another position, crouches there for a bit, and then uppercuts him into oblivion. Fortunately, I can say that in future fight scenes, the cinematography and the characters improve a bit, but unfortunately, the dialogue remains ass for the entire movie. In and out of fight scenes, it's just ass. Some parts aren't that bad, and then other parts are just fucking abysmal. Moving on, we cut to a flashback where Peter's late to hanging out with Harry, MJ, and Gwen, and he plans on proposing to Gwen, but doesn't because he's a little bitch boy. There's not much to say about this scene, but there is something to say about the fucking introduction and the title sequence where I can officially give my first compliment to the movie. The main theme and the rest of the music for Spider-Man Lotus is fucking fantastic. Spider-Man Lotus probably has my second favorite Spider-Man theme, only being beaten by the Amazing Spider-Man 2's theme because Hans Zimmer is simply fucking unbeatable. But then we get a cut right back to another scene with fucking MJ. I don't know why, but whenever this woman is on screen, I swear to God, she's not even acting. She is just standing there and reading the script that's posted up on a big screen behind the camera, and she tries to look ordinary while doing it, and it doesn't work. I don't think it really helps her case either when this scene plays out like later in the movie.
How'd your audition go? They've got no idea who they're missing out on.
Like, yeah, bitch, I think we all know why you haven't gotten any roles, MJ. You can't even fucking pretend to mourn the death of your closest friend. Cue a pretty heated argument between Peter and Harry about loss and empathy, and Peter having an odd dream about Gwen's death. And what comes after is another one of the greatest parts about this movie. How they portrayed the theme of dealing with loss. Especially when we get to see all of the videos that Peter and his friends made through high school, which has the best acting out of the entire first hour run, by the way. It just really makes you feel that loss that Peter is feeling right now. And it makes you feel like fucking shit, actually. Made me feel like shit. I was genuinely kind of sad. And too bad this fucking masterpiece of a scene is immediately followed by, I shit you not, a sequence of Harry walking around New York for like 4 minutes straight. There is nothing to this. There is no importance to the overarching story. It literally just felt like these motherfuckers saw the movie length and said, nah, an hour and 56 minutes is not long enough. We need some filler to hit the 2-hour mark. Oh, I know, let's film Harry walking around in the streets like some fucking edgelord for 4 minutes. Yeah, that'll be a great way to push ourselves into the time frame. And this whole thing was a fucking setup so that the camera could pan up to Peter finally putting his suit back on for the first time after Gwen's death. I'm not even fucking kidding here. 4 minutes of a dude walking around in a city led to that. Fuck, even I could think of a better way to go about that build-up. Instead of Harry walking around for 4 minutes, the scene could have just started with him chilling on the bridge, pondering about what he said to Peter during their argument. Then he decides that he may have been a little too hard on Peter. Feeling bad about how much of a dick he was, he decides to give Pete a call in hopes of apologizing, only to get the answering machine because Spider-Man never carries his personal phone. As he leaves a message for Peter telling him to call back as soon as possible, the camera pans up to Spider-Man squatting on the bridge and the movie continues on. I don't know if I should feel proud of the fact that I just thought of that. Like, yeah, I did better than the original writers, but at the same time, given the circumstances and how low the bar was set, it's not that fucking impressive. Anywho, we get to see a pretty decent recreation of Gwen's comic death, where Peter accidentally kills her through whiplash, and the Green Goblin basically just torments him for the next 10 minutes and then gets his shit kicked in. I've seen some complaints about the Goblin's design for the movie, and I don't get it. He looks fine enough and it gets the job done. The only thing that I really have to say is that I can't tell if the face is actually meant to be his face, or if it's supposed to be a mask he's wearing. I've never read the comics because I'm not a fucking nerd, but I'd assume the answer would be in there somewhere. Moving on, we get yet another fucking MJ scene where she reminisces about a conversation she had with Gwen, and it's the one that I was talking about with the movie and whatever the fuck. Then she gets met by Flash Thompson at a party, and they have the most fucking stale conversation I've ever had the displeasure of watching. Neither actor seems as though they want to be there, and I bet if you pulled like 2 people out of some shitty Disney show from like 2013 and stuck them in this scene, filling these roles, they would still have a better performance than whatever shit stain was presented to us in the movie. And that's about as far as I've gotten, so I'm just gonna go and try to push my way through the last hour of the movie, so I'll be back. Spider-Man spins a web any size. Okay, I bear good news. The second half of the movie is surprisingly solid for what it is, or at least part of it is. After the terribly painful interaction between Flash and MJ, we get another tie-in to the Amazing Spider-Man comics where Peter is invited to visit a terminally ill little boy who is absolutely nuts about him. And honestly, this entire part of Spider-Man Lotus could have easily been its own short film with everything else left out. And I feel like the entire project as a whole would have been much better received had they only done that. The acting for the scene is very good for a change. The tone and the mood is calming yet kind of sad in a way, and it manages to bring emotion out to the viewer similar to how the videotapes did. And unfortunately we have to deal with a few scenes of Harry being an edgelord and MJ deciding that she didn't want her acting to be terrible anymore. But overall, without all this extra shit, this would be a very solid short film. I really like that in this timeline Peter actually becomes established as the superhero Spider-Man before Uncle Ben's death, because it gave Peter this period of time where he didn't see Spider-Man as a responsibility, but more of like an easy profit and a boost for his ego. And that really weighs down on Peter, especially after Gwen's death. You know, it feels like he took the suit for granted the whole time, and this begins to get amplified once the boy starts talking about the time frame where Gwen passed. So Pete gets extremely uncomfortable and ends up telling the kid that Spider-Man is basically just a giant lie, and he's not who the kid thinks he is, before walking out on him. It's honestly really, really fucking depressing. And then we cut back to, oh, thanks, Omar. Thank you for saving us from yet another boring sequence between MJ and Harry that doesn't really need to be in the movie. Peter is confronted by the kid's heartbroken mother after walking out on her son, to which she begs him to go back in and give the kid something to believe in before his passing. I gotta be honest, the fact that the mother is in this movie for a good minute of screen time and still puts on one of the best performances is fucking stupid. But either way, good for her. Like, props to her for being that good of an actress. So Peter takes his first big leap into the next step of the grieving process and moves out of his comfort zone to go through Spider-Man's history in a scrapbook that the kid made for him. This is the highlight of the movie, folks. I genuinely felt like everything in this scene was beautiful as shit. The music is stellar, as it's been the whole time, and the movie perfectly displays Peter's realization, even with the mask on, that he will never be perfect, and that even though he's never gonna be perfect, people need something good to believe in, and he has to fill those shoes. And finally, as the music quiets down and the emotion subsides, we transition to the end of Pete's visit, where the kid asks him who he really is. Peter takes off his mask and reassures Tim that no matter what happens next, he's a brave kid and he'll be able to push through. Then Pete gets up from the bed, walks to the window, and jumps out. We then get a monologue from Peter to Gwen about how he's doing, how much he misses her, and that he promises to move on and be the best person that he can be. The screen cuts to black, and the credits roll. Is what would have happened if there wasn't so much fucking filler. Of course, we get another 10 minutes of awkward dialogue between Peter, MJ, and Harry before Flash shows up again to provide his beautiful Oscar-winning performance. Peter's about to meet MJ and Harry at Flash's party, and right as he's about to go in and have a good time, he hears sirens once again. Unlike previously in the movie, though, after a lot of thought, he decides not to ignore them, and he rips his fucking shirt open to reveal the suit like Superman does, and then the credits roll. What the fuck? You did not just completely rip off a DC character's signature move with a Marvel character and then throw the credits on top. What the fuck was that? They had like 3 different opportunities to have a perfect ending for the movie, and they took none of them.
Catch your speed, just like flies, look out!
I took a little break, so I'm just gonna wrap up with my general opinions on everything. I'm gonna start off with the name. I fucking hate the name. The Lotus part does make sense because the lotus flower is supposed to represent overcoming hard times in your life and whatnot, but it's really not a Spider-Man movie. I feel like this movie would be a lot more appropriately named if it was called Peter Parker. From what I've gathered online, it seems like a lot of people assumed that this fan film was gonna be a traditional Spider-Man-esque movie, which was a fault in both the name and the advertising for the movie over the years. You know, all they really advertised for this movie was how cool the swinging scenes looked and the promotionals, how cool Spider-Man looked, and nobody gave a fuck about the Peter Parker side of things, which was the biggest issue, because that's exactly what it's about. So the promotionals didn't really tell its audience what the movie was actually supposed to accomplish. You know, some of the acting genuinely made me take breaks from the movie too, not because it was good by any means, but the opposite. It took me like 5 or 6 sittings to watch the whole thing because I kept having to take my cringe breaks, as I'll call them, and Harry's entire subplot was completely unnecessary. Like, I get that they wanted to show Harry's way of dealing with loss too, and the actor actually did a very good job, but it genuinely has no relation to the overarching plot of Peter learning that Spider-Man is his responsibility, not just a role that he can play whenever he wants to. Speaking of Spider-Man, I actually wanted to praise the costume design in this movie because it's fucking amazing. It's definitely my favorite live-action suit ever, is what I would say if they didn't have the fat fucking spider on the back. I don't know why, but I've never liked that fat spider on the back. Now, the CGI in action scenes definitely could have used a little bit of work, but now I understand that they weren't really the focus of the movie, so I guess I can excuse that in a way. And I guess I should meat ride the score one last time before I stop, because Jesus Christ, there were times when the music for the scene alone kept the entire fucking thing together, which is both a really big compliment for the score and a really big critique for the actual movie. So in sum, Spider-Man Lotus gets like a 5 out of 10 on my list. Is it as bad as people have been saying? I mean, not really, but it definitely ain't the best thing in the world either. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, cool. If you didn't, I don't give a fuck. The video's over now, you can leave.